Hello and welcome back to A Splash of Paint. Now it's time for our regular introducing feature where we throw the spotlight on an up-and-coming professional SAA artist who is making a creative stir. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the versatile artist and tutor, Steve Williams. So settle back and let's take a look at him in action.
Hello, my name's Steve Williams. What I'm going to do today, I'm going to show you my simple way of producing realistic skies. I'm taking this photograph that I took during a holiday in southwest Scotland. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put my horizon about here. As you can see from the photograph, we've got a couple of little hills there. We don't need to do too much about these, and we've got Rough Island in the front here. Believe me, this is what it's called. Little bit of foliage at the front. Okay, so that's probably all the extent that I would do when I'm painting acrylic. Because after all, my way of painting is very loose. And what I tell people when they want to try and loosen the work up is use the biggest brush that you can do comfortably. Today, I'm using an SAA acrylic brush, and they're a joy to use. There's a nice spring in the bristles. It's a good way of pushing paint round. Whenever I do a painting, I think when probably anyone does a painting at all, the sky dictates what the general ambience of the painting is going to be. So I always start with the sky first, and as I go along, I'll tell you what paint I'm using. If you're painting acrylic, what you will need more than any other colour is titanium white. I'm using Galleria acrylics here. The Galleria white is the most opaque white I've come across. I'm painting on SAA practice paper rough. Essentially, it's a watercolour paper, but nevertheless, it's a lovely surface to paint on. If you're painting and you think that the paint is drying a little quick, what you need to do is tip the first sort of eighth of an inch or so into water, and you'll be surprised how much easily it'll spread. Right, okay, so here we go. For the sky, I'm taking the titanium white, and into this titanium white, I'm putting cobalt blue. What I'm aiming for is quite a light blue, but what you have to be confident in doing is making sure that you have enough paint. It's no good making a little piece of paint, and you get across here, you've run out, you've got to rematch it, and you may have a different colour on the other part of the sky. So this is my way of approaching skies, and I think it's a simple and effective way for realistic skies. Now, into that cobalt blue, I'm just going to put a tip of burnt umber. You may think it's a bit odd putting brown into a sky, but what it does, essentially, blue and brown, cobalt blue and burnt umber, make grey. I'm going to start, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to cover all of the sky area. Now, you can see how smooth and easy this goes on. The paint is easy to use. The Galleria paint's easy to use, but these brushes really do push the paint round. I'm using a number 12 flat. Now, I've covered that area over with this kind of neutral grey. Now, we need to decide what kind of a sky we're going to have. I would generally put this kind of mixture on any sky I was doing, unless it was a sunset, of course. So I'm going to put some areas of blue sky in here. By doing that, what I'm effectively doing is painting the clouds in negatively. So to do that, I take just a little more cobalt blue. So I make my sky colour a lot more definite blue. And then I'm going to decide now where I want my clouds to be. You can see that what I'm effectively doing here, I'm putting the blue where I don't want the clouds. So I think we'll have some clouds here. We'll drop it down a touch here. This gives us the start of our sky. So that's where I'm going to have the blue part of my sky. What I'm going to do now is put some white into the areas where the clouds are. Now, a couple of things here. This base paint, I can touch it. It's not wet, but it's not dry yet. So when I put white onto this, into these areas, what I'm going to be doing is re-wetting some of this. And it'll not stay white, it'll be just a little bit grey. So what I'm going to do is start to put some of these clouds in. It starts to run out of white, so all I have to do is flick the brush over and we get a few more areas of cloud in. What I hope I'm achieving is to keep these cloud areas very bitty and very ragged, and that way they will look more realistic. You may notice while I'm doing this, I'm not painting like this, I'm using the side of the brush. When you use the side of the brush, what actually happens, you tend to be pulling hairs out like this of the brush, and that gives it its own sort of almost random effect. I know that we control what we do, but it just introduces a little bit of randomness. Right, so now I'm going to wash the white out of this brush. Now then, into my blue area, I'm going to make a little deeper grey than I first used. And the reason for this is to put a little bit of shadow on the cloud areas. So the brush is almost painting itself. I think it always works very well if we use just a touch of yellow on the horizon. Don't be frightened about putting yellow on the horizon, because we can scrub it up into the sky. I think a little yellow on the horizon pushes the sky back. That might be just a touch on the deep side, but nevertheless, we can just tone that down a touch. Right. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take some, mainly white. I use more white than anything. So I'm going to take a little ultramarine blue and a tiny touch of alizarin crimson. And anyone that's used alizarin crimson will understand what I mean. Perhaps just a flick of burnt sienna. I'm just going to give this kind of very pale mountain area in the background, because although I'm demonstrating how to do simple and effective skies, I don't really just want to make it the sky on its own. So I just wanted to put a bit of land there. As I've explained, this is essentially to show skies. The groundwork is almost incidental here. We could perhaps just invent a little bit of lake in the foreground here, just to finish this off. I wanted just to show how easy and simple it is to produce quite a realistic sky. Just with a little practice, before long, you'll also be producing very, very effective and realistic skies.
Great style there, perfect for creating realistic and effective results. Thanks, Steve. Well, folks, we've just got time for today's Art Bite project, so let's join popular SAA artist Warren Seeley as he demonstrates how to transform a pre-stretched canvas and canvas board to give your paintings a more professional finish.
Right, hello. Today I just want to talk about what I cover my boards with. I give them a tone, usually a mid-tone, because I work on a wooden palette, and what I mix on my palettes, I want to relate what I have up here. So when I mix a colour, when I see it on here, it has to look the same when I put it on here. So if I was working on a white board, this wouldn't really relate. It would look different if I mix it here and put it on a white canvas. The tone of your palette should, in theory, match roughly the tone of your surface. So I use a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and I mix that with turpentine. So it's like a wash, like a watercolor wash. And I cover my board, my paper, whatever I'm using, with that wash, and then wipe it back with a rag. And now you can see I have two completely different looking boards here. Now, they're made with the same colours, the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna, but I've clearly used more burnt sienna here and more ultramarine blue here. So why have I done that? Well, if I were painting a landscape which has lots of cool colours, lots of blues, lots of greens, then I would want a warm base underneath that. And you can see that in painters like Constable used reds and browns, warm browns, underneath their landscapes, because you want that warmth to tie the whole thing together. And if I was painting a portrait, then portrait colours are generally very warm, the yellow ochres, the vermilions, and very warm colours. So I want that to go on a cool base. I want to have that underneath it. So you get that interaction between warm and cool. That's quite important. And that's why you'll always find watercolour palettes are always white. because watercolourists work on white paper, so you will never find a palette that isn't white. There'll always be white. I've never seen a watercolour palette that isn't white. So there you go. If you work with a wooden palette, then I recommend you do tone your boards. It makes judging your values and colours much easier. So there you go. See you next time.
Thanks for those great tips, Warren. Why don't you try using a coloured ground to help you transform your finished paintings? And remember, let us know how you get on. Well, folks, time for another break now, but join us in part 4 when SAA professional artist Mike Skidmore returns to add a finishing touch to today's Try Your Hand At project. I'll see you after the break.